Bench Warriors!
Hello and welcome back to the Bench Warriors podcast, the Denver Broncos Bench Warriors podcast. As always, I'm very appreciative for you taking time out today and week to listen and consume this content. It really means a lot to me, and so please don't forget to hit the like button, subscribe, share, jump in the comment section. I would love to jump in that comment section and have a discussion about your opinions of the topics or your opinions of the podcast. Really appreciate it. And without further ado, we're going to jump into this podcast with covering the Denver Broncos coming off a dominant win against the San Diego and kind of their playoff push now, the first playoff push since 2015 in the Super Bowl, the 2015 Super Bowl season, and just how much the defense, in my opinion, has been the driving force behind this winning streak. Kind of the outlook of the Broncos playoff chances, and then also what this means for the Broncos moving forward next season with the offseason and draft and the moves that the team might be looking at making and positions in the. So I just want to jump off first saying that the defense is back. Coming into the season, I know I was under the opinion, and a lot of people, Broncos one of the best in the NFL, and then they got up to that really rocky start. 7 points allowed against the Dolphins, obviously a nightmare performance, and Vance Joseph kind of getting all of the heat and the blame for the Broncos slow, and the defense is back, and I think Vance Joseph deserves a lot of the credit. I think the coaching staff as a whole deserves so much of this credit for the reason the Broncos are having this recent success. But especially with Vance Joseph, with that turnaround of the defense and them being back to being an elite defense, top 3, maybe best, not on paper, just how they're playing. And just a couple of numbers when we're going over it. Since week 11, the Broncos have 12 forced fumbles, which is tied, or not tied, which is the number one stat in the NFL for forced fumbles. The second place over that span is 7. So again, the Broncos forcing a ton of turnovers, and that's been the big driving force in helping out this offense. And then the Broncos over the last 3 games have 18 sacks, so they're getting a ton of pressure. And then the total 20 total turnovers on the season, which is tied for first in the NFL. So this defense has made a huge shift from being historically bad against the Dolphins offense and has become one of the best defenses in the NFL, and maybe the best defense in the NFL in getting turnovers. I think Vance Joseph deserves a ton of credit because I know plenty of media members and fans, especially, who were at the beginning of the season, me included. I knew I had experienced Vance Joseph years in the defense that he had when he was head coaching Denver, so I was already skeptical when he was hired, and then obviously he got started to a terrible start. And now the work that he's done with his defense has come. The defense looks comfortable in their own. There's still a lot of holes on the defense, but they're getting turnovers. And I'm under the opinion. My opinion is that a lot of turnovers are usually luck. So it's not a round ball. So it's not going to bounce perfectly. That football, it bounces in weird ways. I think that you do get on hot streaks where it just seems like the ball is just bouncing your way. I think over this streak, over these last 6-7 games, the ball just seems to be bouncing in the Broncos' way. And things just happen to be going their way. And I said this in another show I was on last week, but this season is really reminded me of the Eagles season. It was elite defense. The kicking's not as great as it was that year. Tebow led Broncos to the playoffs, but where it was the defense keeping the team in it and creating so many turnovers and just shutting down opposing teams. And then Tim Tebow making miracle plays. That's kind of how it's been, where it's been Russ. Just the offense has been sputtering when they're not getting turnovers. And the defense is handing the offense the ball into plus territory almost every other drive. And then the offense is able to get a field goal, or they're able at the end of games, because Russ right now is currently leading the NFL with four quarter comebacks. So Russ has been able to come back, throw a game-winning touchdown or touchdown at the end of the game, a few minutes left on the clock, and then leading to that win. And it's a lot on the defense. The defense has been the driving force. And then, as I said earlier, the coaching staff. These were really seeing the benefits of having an elite coach, head coach, and coaching staff. We know that Denver it's been pretty bad with the head coach staffs lately, with the Vance Josephs, the Vic Fangios, and then the Nathaniel Hackett last year was a nightmare scenario. And then Sean Payton comes in, and it started off a little rocky, but it seems like he's got that roster bought in. He is changing the to a winning culture, and he's completely shifted the outlook of the Broncos team. Now, and he has the Broncos on a playoff run right now, and they're currently sitting at a 51% chance to make the playoffs, so they're more likely to than not make the playoffs. And I think anybody that's known me and knows my opinions on the team, I've been under the opinion that the team needs to do whatever. If you don't have your quarterback, you need to do whatever is in your power to go get your quarterback. I was against winning games at the beginning of the season because I knew that Russ wasn't the guy. I still don't think Russ is the guy moving forward. I think what a lot of Sean Payton is doing is the offense that he's made has been masking the problems that you have when Russ is your quarterback, and we see that in the games. We saw that in the Texans game where they try and go to a pass-heavy offense or they're pass first, and then all of a sudden Russ crumbles, and that was happening at the beginning of the season too, where the Broncos were losing games when Russ was being asked to throw the ball. So then the offense has completely shifted now, where the offensive scheme is pretty much just run the ball on first and second down, sometimes first, second, and third down, and just keep running, and then dink and dunk passes to the running backs behind the line of scrimmage or just for 5 yards. Let Russ just kind of, do these little short passes to keep his passer rating up and completion percentage up, and just they're extensions of the run game, all these little passes. So it's just run the ball, short passes, and then chuck it up to Cortland Sutton. And that's kind of the offense. It's like Cortland Sutton's down there somewhere, and he's just going to throw it, and then those usually end up in touchdowns. And those are the only explosive plays in this offense. And I think this season is a lot closer to the previous seasons than people admit, where it's the defense carrying the offense. I think the offense looks better because they have a much better head coach and offensive line. It's created a system behind hiding Russ and just allowing him to play game manager. But again, this reminds me so much of the Tim Tebow system. The offense was doing nothing until late game situations or in the red zone, and that's where I'll give credit to Russ, is that in late game situations and in the red zone, he's looked good. And that's because he used to be an elite player, and he still has that talent in him. I think the age has really cut back on what he's able to do. There are very few things that he's able to do. I think a couple of those things are what's helping the Broncos. I just think as you're moving forward beyond this season, I don't think it's smart to saddle yourself to him for multiple seasons with his age. He's already 35, so he's only getting older and slower, and the physical attributes for him are just going to continue to keep going downhill. I don't think it's smart to saddle yourself to his quarterback. But if you're just looking at this year, the Broncos 51% chance to make the playoffs currently, and they have 4 games left. And I believe from when I was running the simulations earlier in the week, the Broncos basically have to go 3-1 over the remaining games, and the one loss they really can afford to lose is the Lions, because you don't want to lose any AFC teams, because the AFC your record against AFC teams is one of the tiebreakers. So the Broncos really, if you're rooting for the Broncos to make the playoffs and for the Broncos to make the playoffs, you need to at least go 3-1. And you want that one loss to be against the Lions this week. You cannot afford to lose against the Patriots, Chargers, or Raiders, because those are AFC opponents. Denver currently has a losing record against teams. So that's just something you need to get done if you're trying to make the playoffs. Now, going into the playoffs and Is this team good enough to win a playoff game? In my opinion, I don't think they are. I think the defense is playing great. It's not taking anything away from defense. I think McClellan has solidified himself as the starting slot corner moving forward. He's become a star. Surtain's a star. Zach Allen's playing great after a rough start to the season. I think that the Broncos are. I think the defense is playing great, but they're really benefiting off of the turnovers, which I think a lot of it comes to luck. Is the ball bouncing your way? And I think the ball's been bouncing the Broncos' way over this one. The offense, I don't think is good enough. I don't think the offense is good enough to win in the regular season if you're not getting insane turnovers. We saw that against the Texans. They lost the turnover battle. They lost that game. And earlier in the season, any game that they lost the turnover battle, they lost those games. I know that's generally what happens in the NFL, but it feels like even when you're tied in the turnover battle, this offense is just, it stalls out inside the 20-yard lines. Unless the ball is handed to them in the opponent's territory, it feels like the offense is just not getting it. So I think heading into the playoffs, I don't think this is a team that can win a playoff game unless somehow the streak keeps going and they keep playing backup quarterbacks too. I think that's really benefited Denver as well, is playing the backup quarterbacks and playing the Browns with their starting corner, or the Texans get Tank Dell getting hurt early in the game. It's just the Broncos. Again, I'm going to keep going back to it. The Tebow season. It just seems like everything is falling in place for the Broncos, especially to get into the playoffs. All the teams ahead of them that they're competing with, aside from the Texans, are playing backup quarterbacks. And the Texans, C.J. Stroud is on concussion protocol. So who knows how long he'll be out if he does miss the game. But it's everything setting up. Everybody around them is playing with backup quarterbacks, and the Broncos are the healthiest team in the NFL. And I just feel like I'm crazy because I'm sitting here and saying that. It just feels like a lot of this is being chalked up to miracles like the Tebow season. But I think a lot of people in Broncos country are just excited to be rooting for meaningful games. I'm under the opinion that I think this season's, I think it's doing well to build a winning culture. But I think at the end of the day, if the Broncos don't go get a quarterback in the draft, and invest in one like a first round pick in the draft, and Sean Payton and the front office don't have a plan to go get a quarterback, I think the season is doing more harm than good at the end of the day. Because then you're just going to stride yourself to Russ. It's getting that false positive, convincing yourself that, oh, we can win with Russ. Which I just don't think. I think Russ and this offense and this defense and this game plan can get you to 9-8, 10-7, and to a playoff spot, but that's about it. I think the team with Russ is a lot like with the Andy Reid and Alex Smith teams, Chiefs teams, where there's a clear cap to your team. I think that cap, the absolute cap, is getting to the playoffs. Maybe winning one playoff game if bounces, the ball bounces your way. But I think that's the absolute ceiling to your team. I think there's a clear ceiling when Russ is your quarterback and this is the offensive system that you have. But right now it's working. So if you're rooting for the Broncos to make the playoffs, then you're rooting for 3-1 over the remaining part of the schedule. And you're rooting for the defense to continue to keep getting turnovers. Now, heading into the offseason and kind of just the outlook of that and what their looks, where it's setting up with the draft, just kind of an early look at the draft. And I'll go in depth because I love the draft. My favorite part about sports is building the team. I love covering the draft and free agency. So I'll definitely, over that period, when the season's over, I'll go more in depth into that. We'll cover the draft and go over positions and maybe players that the Broncos might be looking at. But just an overview. I think it's a very big conversation that the Broncos are going to have with themselves is quarterback, obviously. So if they really don't want to move forward with Russ, then they're going to need to look at quarterbacks. You need to go get first round. If you're going against what I would do and you're just going to push quarterback off for another 2 years and you're going to build around Russ, then I think the offense, you definitely need another wide receiver. I think Jerry Jeudy's just not cut. I think it was a big mistake not trading him because we heard those rumors from Adam Schefter. The Broncos got offered a third and fifth for Jerry Jeudy. I think if that was true, then that is a colossal mistake to trade him. To have not traded him for that value, which I think was even at the time I thought was incredibly high value. And now I just feel like his value is further down. I'm not sure what you're going to get. I think you might be lucky. But you need another wide receiver. You need speed on the offense. You need speed at wide receiver. You need speed at tight end. I think you're kind of locked into the offense because I think Garrett Bowles has played himself into another contract or a contract extension. But I think that is on the offense. And then on the defense, I think you need another defensive lineman other than Zach Allen to help bring pressure. I think pressure, pass rush in general is very big. I think they need another edge rusher, maybe two. Nick Bonito, that was another big story that I forgot to cover with the game, was that Bonito left the game in a knee brace. He had to be carted off. We haven't really heard too much about how serious, as of the recording, we haven't really heard about how serious that injury is. But especially if that's going to keep him out even until next season. They were already struggling to get pressure, consistent pressure, especially from the edge. Edge is going to be a huge need for the Broncos, and I think starting corner. I think receiver, tight end, D lineman, and corner, and edge rusher are your 5 biggest needs for the Broncos offense. If you're not going quarterback, if you are going quarterback, I think quarterback just jumps to the top of that list. But I'll get more in depth into that in the offseason as we get closer to the draft and the end of the season. I just wanted to focus on this podcast with the defense and how I think Vance Joseph deserves a lot of credit for how much he shifted this defense, and Sean Peyton for bringing in a great coaching staff. And I don't have any problems with the coaching staff right now. They're all coaching their asses off and doing a great job in changing this culture. My one concern is I hope they don't get that false positive. I just don't think you want to saddle yourself to him moving forward. But until the offseason, Sean Payton's got the Broncos on a playoff push, and his first playoff push since the 2015 season. And they're playing great football right now. The defense is. And the offense is playing. They're playing enough to win games. So I think I just wanted to give Vance Joseph his credit and then Sean Payton the credit with how it started, with just it's the credit of him being able to completely shift the narrative of the team and the coaching staff. So there'll be another podcast at the end of this week covering the Broncos game after they play the Lions, and then stay tuned for that. And then, of course, stay tuned for the Denver Nuggets podcast. I'll jump into that this week. There'll be 2 Denver Nuggets podcasts this week covering the Nuggets, and then them coming back from their losing streak and now great again. So as always, thank you for listening to Bench Warriors and the Denver Broncos podcast and any of our content. Don't forget to hit the like button, share, subscribe, comment, follow us on TikTok as well. I really appreciate it. And thank you for taking time out of your day.
Bench Warriors!